We're talking chili peppers today on Pots and Trowels, and that's brought to you with the support of King Seeds and Cobra Garden. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. Well, this week we're down in Essex at RHS Garden Hyde Hall, where we're here at their annual garden show, where we've got 30 odd nurseries with these wonderful displays, and we're going to have a look at some chilies in a moment. But just a little reminder, we also do a weekly podcast as well as our videos, and we're going to feature the South Devon Chilli Farm on a podcast very soon, so listen out for that. And this is what we've come to look at, this wonderful display of chili peppers, which are hugely popular, all grown by Amrit. Hi Amrit, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Yeah, well, this is your first time at a show like this, isn't it? And a wonderful display you've created.
It is, yeah. First time sort of putting ourselves out there with chili plants and what we grew at the farm. We're just quite comfortable with it there. But bringing it into a showcase is it's a new for us.
Yeah, it is. But it gets that message out to everybody about the wonderful range that you grow. Because back at the chili farm in South Devon, you grow a huge range of chilies, don't you?
Absolutely huge range. Every year it's probably close to 100 varieties we'd grow for seed collecting, for various avenues in the business. But growing specimen plants to bring on site and transporting them is a whole other ball game altogether.
So all the plants you've got on this display here, you either sell as seed to your customers or young plants for them to grow on. And this is, I think, a good way of showcasing what they're going to look like by late summer, isn't it?
We don't grow all the varieties out to sell as plants. We have to pick which ones are going to sell that year. But seeds are the main thing, because then you can sell all the varieties at any time of the year.
So are you finding that chilies are getting more and more popular every year?
Yeah, they are, especially when the food programs talk about some sort of speciality dish that needs a particular type of chili. Then everybody goes crazy for it and sort of calls us up and says, do you have it?
Yeah.
And quite often we don't, because you can't keep up with the marketing.
If you knew 6 months in advance.
If we knew 6 months in advance, we would have grown them. But by and large, we have most of the varieties that people would be looking for from a culinary point of view. And we're the only ones doing it.
Yeah. So these are chili peppers. So what differentiates the chili pepper to a sweet pepper?
So funny enough, they all belong to the same genus, a capsicum. And then underneath that, you've got the different species. And there's sort of 5 sort of commercially grown species out there. I'm not going to try and rattle them off, but you've got the capsicum chinense and capsicum pubescens and a few others. So in terms of a bell pepper versus a chili pepper, there's very little difference.
Right.
It's just the heat level.
Okay.
In fact, this is a padron pepper here, your typical pimento de patron that you'd grow as a tapas pepper in Spain, which would be fried, but this has been left to ripen on there.
Oh, I see.
And to the untrained eye, that'll probably look like a bell pepper, or at least a small bell pepper.
And how hot is that? Because some people go for the really, really hot ones, don't they?
So that, when the padron pepper is picked at its sort of sweetest stage, it's where it's sort of thumb-sized, and you fry it up in a bit of olive oil. When you leave it to that size, it gets quite spicy. So if you were to dry that and powderize it, you'd call it a hot paprika.
Right.
Whereas most people would then pick it at the sort of green stage.
So the heat of the chili pepper increases as they ripen and dry. Does it change from being green to... Because they all start green, don't they?
They all start either green or purple or something like that, but then they ripen to an orange or red, a sort of orangey red, different sort of shades of the brighter color spectrum. But nobody really knows. There's a lot of academic research to understand where the heat level comes from. But what we know for sure from the padron peppers is if they're picked early on, they're milder than if they mature.
Right, okay.
So at least with that variety, we sort of work with that and make sure we're not picking anything too mature to sell.
Yeah, good. I mean, what amazes me about these, Amrit, is, we see chili peppers for sale in supermarkets and on markets, but the range and the colours, not only of the peppers, but of the foliage and the flowers, they are really ornamental in their own right.
Definitely.
Aren't they? Beautiful.
I mean, you look at this, you would never have thought that would be a chili plant. It's such a dark coloured foliage, and the more heat and light this is called a Peruvian purple.
Yeah.
The more heat and light this gets, it'll get darker and more intense. And we actually did a planting at the farm one year where we sort of planted this amongst some alchemilla, and you get that lime green foliage contrast, and it just stands out.
Yeah.
And most people would probably grow this just for the fact that it has attractive looking fruits and flowers, rather than from a culinary point of view. Although it's edible and still tastes good, people just sort of grow that for an ornamental.
And these are fine to grow on a patio, aren't they? If you've got a sunny patio, you can use these as ornamental plants with other plants around.
Yeah, we have some customers who when we did a display similar to this before, the border at least, he came by to the farm and bought like 60 odd plants to make a border in his own in his own garden because he saw the border here.
Oh, right,
So he sort of used that inspiration. But a lot of these plants, once they've matured and the summer is sort of fully set in and you're not getting cold nights, they can then go out into the patio.
Okay.
As long as it's sheltered and not windy and all of that.
And leave them out until it gets cooler in the autumn.
Exactly, and bring them in and see how far you can stretch that growing season.
So yes, if you've got a greenhouse or a conservatory, you can sort of keep them going
Keep
into
going
winter.
for a bit more. Yeah, it's the nighttime temperatures. As soon as the first frost comes in, then that's it. It'll knock them back, just like tomatoes and other tender annuals. But if you bring them inside and you give them that sort of warmth and extra light, you can carry that season on.
Right, and some obviously get big and some are compact. So are these like this one here, Basket of Fire? Is that naturally a compact plant?
That is, yes, and a lot of people go for these because not everybody's got big gardens and greenhouses and stuff. So on a sunny windowsill in your kitchen, that will be quite happy, and you'll just be picking the odd one off if you're cooking and just use them there. And what we try and showcase with the border is that you've got small bushy purple varieties, you've got small bushy sort of typical chili looking shapes there, and then you've got the weird sort of bulbul ones, which is why that's called holiday chair. It just looks like a bright bulbul.
It does, doesn't it? Absolutely. Now it's obviously too late for anybody to be sowing seed for this year, but you know, you can buy mature plants and still get 2, 3, 4 months out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we're just at the start of August now. The plants at the farm, our own plants, will keep going August, September, October, and into November. Obviously in Devon it's quite far south, so last frost is a bit further along, but you've got many months left of these plants, as long as you give them the warmth and the light.
Okay. Anybody thinking of growing some next year? Because I know lots and lots of people like to grow the unusual types, and you've got this huge range of them. You know, any tips on sowing the seed in the spring, how to get them started?
Start early. You need a heated propagator. You don't need it, but that's the best thing, because if you don't have a heated propagator that you sort of plug in, a warm airing cupboard, because they need the heat, the consistent heat to germinate. It's almost like the same challenge with growing aubergines and some tomato varieties. They need the consistent heat and moisture. Once they've germinated, then you look after the seedlings. But a lot of people struggle with the germination. But it just requires heat and moisture, that's it.
Right.
And if you give them that consistently, they will germinate. Some varieties take longer, especially if the seeds are old or the carapace is a bit harder. They just give them that time. Because sometimes we sow seeds and only half germinated, and we thought, well, poor germination rate, and 3-4 weeks later, if we've left it in the right conditions, they eventually spring up. It's the high humidity they want, because the seed casing is such a hard dry outer casing because it's protective. It takes a long time for that to rehydrate and be soft enough for the little seedling to push through. So be persistent with it.
Okay, so warmth, moisture to start them off, and then you just need a light position.
Once the first couple leaves come out, then they need the light.
Okay.
And as much light as you can give it, because you don't want it to start growing too leggy. A leggy plant it's not going to mean a bad thing. It just means a more difficult plant to manage.
If you want a bushy one.
Yes,
can you pinch the tips out to make them bush out? Or do you know
in principle, yes. They'll behave just like any other plant. You remove the tip, oxen moves back down, and you get side bushy growth. Okay. But you don't need to do that with chili plants. They naturally create the branching structure.
Okay.
So we don't do any pinching out. Once the plant matures to its sort of matured size, it will naturally send out side shoots, and you'll get that ramification with more flowering and fruiting.
Right, and there's one here that, because I love coloured foliage on all plants, but I love this one. Now this one is the reason because it's called fish.
It's a fish pepper, yeah.
It is a fish pepper. So what's the history of that? Because that's unusual to get a variegated one with this beautiful foliage, isn't it?
It's variegated in the foliage and the fruit. You can see there's that fruit there, and it's a sort of yellowy green, and that yellow will turn orange and then eventually red, and it will stay variegated all the way through to being fully ripened. And interestingly enough, these variegated ones, they will come true to form every time.
From seed, will come variegated.
You can see that little dinky little fruit there.
Yeah.
How striped that is.
Yeah.
So the history with this is that it's almost an heirloom variety. It was originally bred by the plantation workers in the United States on the eastern seaboard, and they would use this pepper in a lot of their seafood dishes. So it became known as fish pepper.
Right.
But it's not a crazy hot pepper, and it's not a mild one, sort of in between. So it'll use in a lot of their seafood dishes. So it's very tasty, and it's one of the ones that's sort of been lost along the way because there's all other colourful things that have come up. and we're trying to bring this back into fashion.
Because I suppose this is not grown commercially anymore, is it?
No.
It's just
Exactly.
collectors and people want something a bit different.
You will never find that in a supermarket.
No, yeah. Well, that's going to be one to put on my list for next year. So I'm going to get a packet of seed of fish, because I just think I can give that to all the family as a present, can't
Yeah,
I? That's
exactly.
great. Well, it's an amazing display. I mean, you are open to the public. If anybody's down in Devon, they can call and see you, can't they?
Now is the best time to visit. So if you go anytime in August, September, even into October, is where you'll see the full set of plants growing. It's the best time because the weather is good, hopefully, and the plants are at their best.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, well, they're brilliant. They really are. I don't like the really hot ones, but you've tempted me to grow a few different ones for their ornamental value. So thanks, Amrit.
All right, thanks very much.
Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels, and remember, all the videos we've done you can find on YouTube, and do listen out for the podcast with Amrit where he goes into a bit more depth about growing the chili peppers. We'll be back again next week in the garden, so we'll see you then. Bye.